Humanity is slowly disappearing. And now, to start here, I want to dispel a common myth. Most people assume humanity is growing out of control and the world is overpopulated. And maybe that used to be true, but it simply isn't anymore. Now, overpopulation feels obvious because cities are crowded, there's a housing shortage, prices are high. It feels like there's too much. There's too many people, too few resources to go around. But in reality, population growth is slowing rapidly. This line here represents the global fertility rate. This number means the number of babies that the average woman has. As you can see, in the 1950s, it was around 4.7. But today, in the 2020s, it's fallen all the way down to 2.5. Now, there's a bit of a magic number here. That magic number is 2.1. In a hypothetical population, if you have 2.1 babies per woman, the population will sustain itself. Global birth rates are projected to rapidly plummet below 2.1, which would mean the human population will start shrinking. And it won't even be that long. Now, to some of you, this may sound like a good thing, because fewer people would mean more resources to go around for the rest of us, right? Well, not exactly. And in fact, oftentimes the opposite is true. Because let's think for a minute. Many of the resources that we need in our lives that we feel like are too scarce are created by humans. Humans grow our food, humans build our houses, we pave our roads, we design and manufacture our own cars. All of our goods are man-made. So if you reduce the number of humans, you reduce the production of resources. You never really get to a point where there's more resources to go around. You just have fewer people to make stuff and fewer people who need stuff, so it's kind of just the same. Except there's one more issue with shrinking populations, because populations don't just decline, they age. Let's look at South Korea as an example. There are nearly twice as many people in their 60s in South Korea as there are in their 20s. And what that does is it places an unbelievable burden on young people, because older folks, they can't work, and they need healthcare and they need retirement plans. And it's the young people who have to pay for it. And so when you have one young person in their 20s responsible for the retirement and healthcare funds of two retirees, it's unfair. It's a crushing burden to place on young people. And just looking at South Korea again as an example, their population will fall in half by the end of the century. They have about 50 million people now. By 2100, they'll have 25 million people. That is insane. So why is this happening? Why aren't people having kids anymore? Well, it's not really their fault. People aren't just choosing to have fewer kids, they're kind of being forced into it. Urbanization, high prices, shortages of resources like housing, difficulty accessing childcare, those are all making it harder to have kids. We used to live in a world where many middle-class people could have one parent stay home while the other makes enough money to support the family, but that's often no longer the case. In the modern world, most often, both parents have to work full-time, and that leaves very little extra room to, raise a child, which is incredibly difficult and time-intensive. So, where do we go from here? How do we make it possible to have kids? The obvious solution is to increase access to things like affordable housing and childcare. Now, many countries have tried this to relatively limited results, but it seems to me like the only thing that will really raise birth rates meaningfully in the long run is a comprehensive, well-thought-out, far-sighted plan to make houses affordable again, to make childcare affordable again, and to give people a little bit of extra financial freedom so that maybe, just maybe, one parent could work part while the other parent works full-time, and maybe that would work. If that was the case, I think birth rates would go up. But in most countries right now, childcare and housing, life in general, is just too expensive for either parent to take significant amounts of time off of work. Now, this will be the defining demographic trend of the century, and it's basically a slow-moving car crash. We can see it coming. We've seen it coming for a long time. And as it stands, we don't really have a great solution. But we know one thing is certain. We know what the problem is. The problem is that life is too expensive. We have ways of making things affordable again, but it takes comprehensive, well thought out policy that we haven't seen implemented at the right scale yet.